The bell had just rung, releasing a flood of students into the crowded hallways and playground of Crestwood High. Laughter, chatter, and the occasional shrill whistle of a teacher's whistle filled the air. Lockers slammed and sneakers squeaked against polished floors as students jostled past one another, each lost in their own world of social hierarchies and adolescent anxieties. Through this chaos walked Aaliyah, moving with a calm and poised confidence that set her apart from the throng. Her dark, expressive eyes scanned the crowd with intelligence and awareness, noting whispers and sideways glances that followed her every step. Aaliyah was known for her grace, her eloquence, and her quiet assertiveness. Yet today, the tension in the air felt heavier, as if someone, or something, was about to disrupt the delicate balance of her day. That someone was Maya, the self-proclaimed queen of the schoolyard. With a sharp tilt of her head and a smirk that betrayed her habitual arrogance, Maya stalked toward Aaliyah, her entourage trailing behind. Maya had a reputation for picking on those she deemed different, her aggression finely tuned to exploit insecurities and provoke reactions. Today, her target was Aaliyah. "You think you're better than everyone else?" Maya sneered, stepping in front of Aaliyah and blocking her path. Her tone carried a mixture of mockery and menace. Students nearby paused to watch, some daring not to intervene, others whispering excitedly about the brewing confrontation. Aaliyah's gaze remained steady. She didn't flinch, though a subtle tightening of her jaw hinted at her inner awareness of the danger. She replied evenly, "I don't think I'm better. I just know who I am." The words only fueled Maya's fury. In a swift motion, she shoved Aaliyah against a locker, causing a hollow clang to echo down the hallway. Aaliyah's books fell to the floor, and murmurs spread like wildfire. Some students gasped, others watched with morbid curiosity. But Aaliyah recovered instantly, gathering her belongings with calm precision, showing a composure that hinted she was no ordinary student. There was an aura about her, subtle, almost imperceptible, that suggested a life and identity beyond the walls of Crestwood High, something far larger and more powerful than Maya could ever understand. As Maya stepped back, smirking and expecting tears or anger, Aaliyah simply adjusted her jacket, offered a polite but unwavering glare, and continued walking. The whispers among the students grew louder, filled with awe and speculation. It was clear, this confrontation had only revealed that Aaliyah was someone to be reckoned with, and Maya had underestimated her entirely. As Aaliyah walked down the crowded hallway, the sounds of students' chatter and laughter faded into a distant hum. Her hand clutched her books a little tighter, but her stride remained calm and deliberate. To the outside observer, she appeared composed, unaffected by Maya's aggression. Yet inside, a storm of thoughts and emotions swirled, tempered by a clarity that few could rival. She had learned long ago how to maintain her outward composure while quietly analyzing every detail, every potential threat, and every opportunity for action. Her mind replayed the encounter with Maya, not with bitterness, but with a calculated assessment. Why did she target me today? Aaliyah considered the timing, the onlookers, the potential social leverage. Her intelligence allowed her to step back from the immediate emotional reaction that others might succumb to, transforming it into insight and strategy. Each shove, each mocking comment, was a clue, a small thread in the larger tapestry of human behavior she was learning to navigate. Aaliyah's resilience had been forged through experiences far beyond typical teenage challenges. Beneath the schoolgirl exterior lay a life steeped in secrecy, careful planning, and a protective presence that had been part of her upbringing for years. She had been taught that vulnerability was a luxury, that intelligence and resourcefulness were weapons, and that patience often yielded far greater power than rash retaliation. In the quiet of her mind, she reminded herself that Maya's actions were predictable, born of insecurity and ignorance, and that her own response would define the outcome far more than the initial attack. Subtle hints of her celebrity connection flickered in her thoughts, like a secret kept just beneath the surface. Though she did not flaunt it, there was an awareness that her life was intertwined with someone powerful, someone whose presence was both protective and invisible. It was a background that gave her confidence, not arrogance, a shield that allowed her to navigate a world that often underestimated her. These reflections were private, like a hidden engine driving her decisions, visible only to herself. Despite the calm and collected exterior, Aaliyah felt a quiet desire for justice. Not vengeance, not anger, but the satisfaction of ensuring that bullies like Maya could not exploit weakness or intimidate those who refused to bow. She imagined scenarios in which Maya's arrogance could be confronted without resorting to cruelty, using wit, intelligence, and subtle leverage to expose her folly. Her mind was already plotting, analyzing potential outcomes, calculating the consequences of every move in a way that spoke to both her resourcefulness and her inner strength. By the time Aaliyah reached her locker and organized her books, her internal storm had settled. She lifted her head, scanning the hallway with sharp awareness. Though the whispers and stares followed her, she was unshaken. To anyone watching, she was simply a composed, confident student, but beneath that exterior, she was much more. A young woman with the intelligence, resilience, and secrets to navigate challenges far beyond the confines of a high school, and the determination to ensure that justice, in her own way, would prevail. Aaliyah slipped into the quiet of the library, the buzz of the school fading behind the heavy wooden doors. She sank into a corner table, spreading her books in an orderly fashion, but her mind wasn't on homework. Instead, it wandered to a truth she had carried since early childhood, a truth she kept hidden from everyone at Crestwood High. She was not just any student navigating the perils of adolescence, she was the adopted daughter of Vin Diesel, the globally recognized actor and action star. This knowledge shaped every decision she made, every interaction she had. Vin Diesel had raised her with an unyielding sense of discipline, resilience, and prudence, but also with profound love and protection. From the moment he had adopted her, he had ensured that her life remained as normal as possible, shielding her from the glare of fame while quietly providing advantages no one else could imagine. There were private security measures, discreet communication channels, and carefully cultivated boundaries that allowed Aaliyah to live among her peers without drawing suspicion. Yet these measures had not dulled her awareness of the power behind her last name, even if no one in school had the faintest idea of her true lineage. Vin's protective instincts were a constant presence. He had made it clear, in subtle but unmistakable ways, that no one could hurt her without consequence. Aaliyah remembered the conversation from months ago when she had expressed concern about bullies. Use your head, not your fists. But know this, if anyone crosses the line, I will handle it. You'll never have to fight alone. That promise lingered in her mind now, offering a sense of calm authority she could project to those around her. It was this quiet assurance that allowed her to walk the school hallways with confidence, knowing that the world she faced was significant but not insurmountable. Aaliyah had also learned the delicate art of secrecy. Her classmates could never know her parentage, for fame brought curiosity and unwanted attention in equal measure. Social media was a minefield, and any slip could invite rumors, paparazzi, or worse. She had become adept at blending in, answering questions with careful neutrality, and maintaining her composure even when provoked. The incident with Maya had reminded her that not everyone could be trusted to respond fairly, but her background gave her a strategic edge. Even as she organized her books and planned her next steps, a thrill of anticipation ran through her. The knowledge that her father's influence could change the trajectory of the bullying, if revealed at the right moment, was both empowering and dangerous. It was a secret weapon, one that required precision, timing, and wisdom. Aaliyah understood that while Maya thought she was dealing with an ordinary girl, the reality was far more complicated, and far more powerful. The question lingered in her mind: how long before this hidden truth became a decisive factor in her fight for respect and justice? While Aaliyah maintained her composure at school, Maya strutted down the same hallways, exuding the confident, untouchable persona that most students had come to associate with her. To anyone observing, she was the embodiment of control: sharp eyeliner, designer sneakers, and a smirk that suggested she owned every corridor she walked through. But beneath that veneer of dominance lay a world of insecurities and pressures that few could fathom. Maya's home life was a stark contrast to the bravado she displayed publicly. Behind the closed doors of her spacious suburban house, the atmosphere was tense and critical. Her parents were distant and highly demanding, their approval contingent on flawless grades, impeccable behavior, and maintaining an image of perfection to neighbors and friends. Praise was rare, criticism was constant. Every achievement felt overshadowed by expectation, every misstep magnified in her parents' eyes. It was in this environment that Maya learned to assert control wherever she could, to carve out spaces in which she felt powerful and untouchable. School had become her battlefield, and bullying was her weapon. The aggression she exhibited toward peers like Aaliyah was not just a desire to dominate, it was a coping mechanism, a mask she had honed to conceal her vulnerabilities. In the mirror at home, she sometimes glimpsed the girl beneath the smirk, a child yearning for validation, desperate for acceptance, and terrified of being overlooked. Yet she had learned early that vulnerability equaled weakness, that showing her insecurities would invite ridicule, not support. So she crafted a persona of confidence, an armor that kept classmates at a distance and allowed her fleeting moments of superiority. Despite her outward bravado, cracks occasionally appeared. Her anxiety flared when teachers questioned her actions too closely, or when peers didn't react with fear or deference. It was in these moments that she felt small, unprotected, and acutely aware of the limits of her control. Unlike Aaliyah, who radiated inner strength and resilience, Maya's sense of power was reactive, dependent on the reactions of those around her. She thrived when others faltered, but the thought of encountering someone truly unshakable like Aaliyah caused a subtle, unacknowledged panic to stir within her. Foreshadowing the consequences of her behavior, Maya's arrogance was her blind spot. She underestimated the intelligence and resourcefulness of those she bullied, assuming fear and submission would always be the natural response. But Aaliyah was different. Maya could not foresee the quiet strength behind her composed exterior, nor the hidden network of support and strategy that lay beneath. The potential for a misstep, a confrontation with someone connected to a world far beyond high school, loomed silently, a danger Maya could not yet recognize. As Maya finished her homework later that evening, she stared at her reflection in the bedroom mirror, her confident smirk momentarily faltering. For a fleeting second, the mask slipped, revealing a girl grappling with the weight of expectations, insecurities, and the desperate need to feel powerful. Little did she know that the next person she underestimated would not only resist her intimidation but hold a secret that could change the entire game, an influence so strong that Maya's carefully constructed world of dominance might crumble in ways she could never anticipate. The following day, the tension at Crestwood High lingered like a heavy fog. Aaliyah navigated the hallways with the same calm, composed demeanor she had maintained since the previous confrontation, but the eyes she passed were not all friendly. Whispers followed her, some filled with curiosity, others with veiled judgment. Teachers had observed the incident with Maya, yet their responses had been tepid, an exchange of polite warnings that barely scratched the surface of the problem. Aaliyah had reported the shoving and humiliation to her homeroom teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, who nodded sympathetically but offered no real solution. "I'll speak to Maya's parents," she promised, her tone warm but clearly constrained by policy and bureaucracy. Yet Aaliyah knew from experience that words meant little when enforcement was weak. The school's administration, concerned primarily with appearances and liability, rarely took decisive action unless an incident escalated to irreparable damage. She had learned that complaints often dissolved into paperwork and polite reprimands, leaving students like her to navigate the consequences on their own. The frustration that simmered inside Aaliyah was not born from weakness, it was born from clarity. She understood that relying solely on school authorities was a gamble she could not afford. The system had failed her, and in the moments of neglect, she realized she needed to rely on her own intelligence, resourcefulness, and careful planning. The knowledge of her unique background gave her confidence, but she also understood the importance of subtlety. Public intervention by her father or any overt display of influence would draw attention she was not yet ready to risk. During lunch, Aaliyah sat with her small circle of trusted friends, who had witnessed bits and pieces of the ongoing harassment. They expressed concern, anxiety, and anger on her behalf, but she reassured them with a calm, almost enigmatic smile. "Don't worry," she said, her tone light but carrying a hint of authority. "I have ways to handle this. You just focus on your own work." She let the words hang in the air, allowing her friends to sense that her response would be intelligent, measured, and decisive. The subtle foreshadowing was deliberate. Aaliyah did not need to reveal the specifics of her plan, nor the shadow of protection that her father's world provided. What mattered was the aura she projected, calm, unshakable, and unafraid. The administration might be slow to act, and Maya might feel untouchable, but Aaliyah had quietly begun to prepare for every potential scenario. She was not powerless, she was calculating, patient, and strategic. As the final bell rang and students flooded into the hallways once more, Aaliyah adjusted her backpack and moved forward with precision. The whispers, the subtle stares, and the ineffectual warnings of school authorities had no impact on her. To anyone observing, she was a composed, intelligent student facing the challenges of high school with dignity. Beneath the surface, however, she was readying herself for the day when justice would no longer be delayed, and when Maya's arrogance would meet consequences she could never anticipate. By midweek, Maya's bullying had escalated beyond the hallways. The tension that had simmered for days now boiled over into public spaces where other students and teachers could witness the harassment. In the classroom, Maya seized any opportunity to humiliate Aaliyah, using sarcastic comments during presentations, mocking her answers, and intentionally knocking over her books in full view of peers. Each act drew stifled gasps from classmates or nervous laughter from those unsure of which side to take. The thrill Maya derived from attention fueled her aggression, but Aaliyah, as always, maintained an unshakable calm, her expression neutral, her composure flawless. Outside the classroom, Maya's cruelty extended into the digital realm. She snapped photos of minor mishaps, a fallen pen, a spilled notebook, and posted them on social media with biting captions, hoping to embarrass Aaliyah and gain followers at her expense. Comments from peers flooded in, some mocking, others attempting to defend Aaliyah, creating a maelstrom of gossip and attention that threatened to spiral out of control. Yet Aaliyah met each incident with measured patience, resisting the instinct to lash out or show vulnerability. She had learned that control was more powerful than reaction, and her silence was a strategy, not a weakness. As she walked through the buzzing hallways, Aaliyah's mind worked rapidly. She analyzed the patterns in Maya's attacks, identifying weaknesses in the bully's strategy and calculating precise, non-violent ways to counteract them. Her plan was not born of revenge, but of justice, of reclaiming dignity, and of exposing the arrogance of someone who had consistently underestimated her. She recognized that timing, subtlety, and social intelligence were crucial. A misstep could escalate the situation or reveal more of her private life than she intended. Aaliyah also considered the broader context. Her influence and connections extended far beyond the school's walls. Though her peers had no inkling of her father's identity, the careful precautions, private security, and discreet network of support available to her provided a quiet advantage. She could leverage knowledge, resources, and influence in ways invisible to Maya, yet potent enough to shift the balance of power. In her mind, this secret was both a shield and a sword, one that required discretion, intelligence, and precise timing. By the end of the day, Aaliyah had laid the groundwork for her response. She reached out to a few trusted friends to ensure witnesses could support her if needed, documented the incidents meticulously, and subtly signaled to Maya that her arrogance was being noticed and analyzed. The bully remained unaware that the girl she sought to torment was quietly orchestrating a plan that would expose the cruelty and hypocrisy inherent in her actions. As the school day ended and students poured out of classrooms and onto the playground, Aaliyah held her head high, radiating calm authority. Maya smirked, thinking she had maintained her upper hand, oblivious to the meticulous, invisible web of strategy unfolding around her. For the first time, it was clear that the balance of power was shifting. The threat of public exposure was no longer just a hypothetical, it was imminent, precise, and in Aaliyah's control. In that moment, the whispers and stares of students, the failed warnings of school authorities, and even Maya's brazen attacks all became pieces in a larger plan, one that would ensure justice, assert Aaliyah's strength, and reveal that bullying someone underestimated could have consequences far beyond the classroom. By the following evening, Vin Diesel had been discreetly updated on the situation at Crestwood High. Aaliyah had mentioned the bullying in passing during a video call, her calm demeanor belying the frustration she felt. Vin, however, immediately understood the gravity of the situation. He knew that Maya's attacks were not isolated incidents, they were escalating publicly, threatening his daughter's emotional well-being and, potentially, her reputation. Though he trusted Aaliyah's intelligence and resilience, his instincts as a father demanded action. Vin's approach was careful and calculated. He understood the importance of discretion, especially given the media's voracious appetite for sensational stories. Public intervention could draw unwanted attention to Aaliyah and potentially escalate the situation in ways that might undermine her autonomy. Instead, he opted for private measures, quietly reaching out to contacts within the school district, security consultants, and trusted allies who could monitor the situation without raising suspicion. Each step was precise, measured, and aimed at protecting Aaliyah while maintaining the normalcy she needed to thrive. When Vin finally arrived at Aaliyah's side in person, it was a quiet, unannounced visit that conveyed support without spectacle. Sitting across from her in her bedroom, he studied her face with an intensity that mixed pride, concern, and unwavering love. "I know you've been handling this on your own," he said gently, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "And I'm proud of how strong you've been. But you don't have to carry this alone anymore. We'll handle it, together." Aaliyah met his gaze, a mixture of gratitude and quiet determination in her eyes. "I appreciate that, Dad," she replied. "I've been managing, but I know you can help in ways I can't. I don't want anyone to make a spectacle of it. Vin nodded knowingly. Exactly. That's why we'll be discreet. No one needs to know until it's done right. We'll ensure Maya understands the boundaries she crossed, and that you are safe, emotionally, socially, and physically, without causing chaos. The bond between father and daughter was evident in the small gestures, a reassuring hand on the shoulder, the shared understanding in a single glance, the unspoken communication of love and trust. Vin's presence alone provided a sense of security that no words could convey. Aliyah felt the weight of the day's tension ease slightly, replaced with the confidence that came from knowing she had an unwavering ally and protector. As they discussed the plan, Vin emphasized respect and intelligence, reinforcing that Aliyah's autonomy and strategic thinking were central to the resolution. You've already shown incredible strength, he said. Now we just need to guide the situation so that your intelligence and calmness shine through. I'll make sure the consequences for crossing the line are clear, but you'll be the one steering this. In that quiet room, a new sense of empowerment settled over Aliyah. She was no longer facing the storm alone. With her father's discreet protection, combined with her own intellect and resourcefulness, the scales of power were beginning to shift. For the first time, she felt that the balance could tilt entirely in her favor, and that Maya had no idea of the forces quietly aligning against her. After her conversation with her father, Aliyah spent the evening analyzing every detail of Maya's behavior, searching for patterns and weaknesses. Her calm, methodical mind worked quickly, cataloging each act of bullying, each witness, each public slip that could be leveraged to reveal Maya's arrogance. Unlike her classmates, who often reacted emotionally or sought immediate retaliation, Aliyah approached the situation like a chess player planning moves several turns ahead. Every action had a purpose, every reaction was calculated. Her strategy was simple yet sophisticated: expose Maya's bullying publicly and intelligently, without stooping to physical retaliation or overt confrontation. Social media, which had been Maya's weapon, would now become a tool for accountability. Aliyah began quietly collecting evidence, photos, screenshots, and detailed notes of every interaction. Each post and comment from Maya would be documented, along with the witnesses who could corroborate the events. She understood the power of visual proof in a world dominated by digital narratives, and she planned to use it carefully to prevent escalation while maximizing impact. Next, she identified allies among her peers. There were students who had quietly observed the bullying but lacked the courage to intervene. Aliyah reached out to them subtly, not through public messages, but in brief, discreet conversations. She encouraged them to pay attention, to remember details, and to support her if the time came. By building a network of witnesses, she created a web of social accountability that Maya would struggle to ignore. These alliances were not manipulative, rather, they were a natural extension of Aliyah's calm leadership and ability to inspire respect, even in those who had previously been neutral or fearful. Aliyah also considered the timing of her actions. She knew that a public school event, a talent show, assembly, or award ceremony would provide a perfect stage for her plan. In such a setting, Maya's behavior could be exposed without appearing as direct retaliation. Aliyah would allow Maya to continue underestimating her, lulling the bully into a false sense of security while the foundation of her plan solidified. The suspense of this approach was deliberate. Maya would remain oblivious until the consequences unfolded, maximizing both the impact and the lesson to be learned. While preparing her strategy, Aliyah maintained her outward composure. In classrooms, hallways, and social spaces, she continued to interact politely and confidently, never betraying the storm of planning brewing beneath the surface. Maya, confident in her own dominance, saw no indication that Aliyah was capable of turning the situation around. The contrast between Aliyah's calm exterior and the strategic mind at work created a sense of dramatic irony. The bully believed she was in control, completely unaware that the scales were quietly shifting. Aliyah's plan also incorporated subtle leverage drawn from her unique background, though she kept this hidden from her allies. Her father's discreet network, the knowledge of consequences far beyond high school, and the understanding that exposure could reach influential circles provided an invisible layer of protection. Maya had no idea that the girl she had humiliated possessed resources and connections that could amplify the repercussions of each misstep. By the end of the evening, Aliyah's plan was fully formed. Each piece of evidence was organized, each ally was aware of their role, and the timing was carefully calibrated. The sense of suspense was almost tangible. She knew that the next encounter would reveal whether Maya would recognize the storm approaching or continue blindly, convinced of her untouchable position. Aliyah felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her approach was not born of anger but of justice, intelligence, and strategic foresight. The following day at school, she walked with the same serene confidence as always, her mind sharp and ready. The whispers, the stares, and the failed warnings of school authorities had all set the stage. Now, the culmination of her careful preparation, her intelligence, and her network of allies would come into play. Maya remained oblivious, smirking and planning her next attack, entirely unaware that the game had already changed, and that Aliyah had mastered every move while the bully believed she still held all the power. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation as students filed into their seats for the annual school assembly. Banners hung along the walls, and the stage was set for presentations and announcements that would usually pass with polite applause and the occasional cheer. Today, however, the atmosphere carried a tension that was almost palpable. Whispers darted through the crowd like electricity. Students sensed that something different was about to unfold. Aliyah entered quietly, her posture straight, her face serene, her dark eyes scanning the audience with calm precision. Her friends gave her subtle nods of encouragement, understanding that the upcoming event was more than a regular assembly. It was the moment when careful preparation and strategic thinking would pay off. She did not need to raise her voice or act dramatically. The power of her intelligence, composure, and meticulous planning would speak for itself. Maya strutted onto the stage a few minutes later, smirking, confident that the spotlight would remain hers. She thrived on attention, and this assembly, filled with peers and teachers alike, was the perfect stage to humiliate Aliyah further. She glanced at her target, expecting the usual nervousness, fear, or perhaps a weak attempt at compliance. What she did not anticipate was the serene, unwavering gaze of a girl who had anticipated every move. As Maya launched into a petty monologue intended to mock Aliyah, the audience began to notice a subtle shift. Screens displayed a pre-prepared slideshow, curated by Aliyah in collaboration with discreetly supportive friends. Each image, comment, and interaction that documented Maya's bullying was revealed, carefully contextualized, factual, and impossible to dismiss. Gasps filled the auditorium as classmates realized the extent of Maya's public harassment. The evidence was clear. The arrogance and cruelty that had seemed insignificant in hallways and social media posts were now laid bare for everyone to see. Maya's confident smirk faltered as murmurs spread through the crowd. She tried to interject, but the meticulous documentation left no room for excuses. Every taunt, every mocking post, every aggressive action was validated and undeniable. For the first time, Maya felt a loss of control, and the audience's reaction shifted from curiosity to admiration for the calm and strategic girl who had orchestrated the exposure. Aliyah remained composed throughout, speaking clearly and with dignity. "No one should have to face harassment or humiliation alone," she said, her voice steady yet commanding. "We are all responsible for holding each other accountable, and actions have consequences." Her words resonated through the room, and the subtle hint in her delivery, confidence, poise, and a barely perceptible aura of influence, caused a few sharp-eyed students to exchange knowing glances. The realization of her famous lineage began to ripple quietly through the crowd, adding an unspoken layer of drama that heightened Maya's humiliation. By the time the assembly concluded, Maya stood frozen, her once commanding presence reduced to embarrassment and disbelief. Students whispered in or about Aliyah's intelligence, strategic thinking, and the calm authority with which she had turned the tables. Admiration for Aliyah surged, and even the most skeptical peers recognized that this young woman was far more than a typical student. She was someone capable of extraordinary foresight and strength. As Aliyah exited the stage, serene and composed, a subtle smile crossed her face. The confrontation had ended, but the lesson remained. Underestimating her was a mistake no one would repeat, and the balance of power had decisively shifted. Maya had been exposed, Aliyah had triumphed, and the whispers of influence, both quiet and potent, lingered in the air, signaling that this was only the beginning of a new era of respect and awareness at Crestwood High. The chaos of the assembly had faded, leaving Crestwood High buzzing with the quiet hum of conversation and speculation. Aliyah walked down the hallway with her friends, her steps measured and confident, yet inwardly she felt a rush of emotions she had long kept carefully contained. The calm exterior she displayed had been her armor, but now, in the quiet aftermath of her public triumph, she allowed herself a private moment of reflection. She thought about the months leading up to this day, the whispered insults, the shoves, the social media attacks, and the moments when she had felt isolated and misunderstood. Each incident had tested her resolve, but each had also strengthened it. Aaliyah realized that her resilience was not merely the absence of fear, but the conscious choice to face adversity with intelligence and dignity. The strength she had cultivated was born of courage, patience, and strategic thinking, qualities that had transformed her from a target into a figure of respect. Her thoughts naturally turned to her identity, the duality that had shaped so much of her life. She was Aaliyah, a smart, capable, and determined young woman navigating high school with poise. She was also Vin Diesel's adopted daughter, a truth she had carried privately, aware of both its power and its potential complications. Today, she embraced both aspects of herself fully. She did not need to reveal the secret to command respect. The way she handled herself, the calm authority she projected, and the strategic brilliance she demonstrated spoke volumes. Still, the knowledge of her father's quiet support added a layer of confidence and security she could feel, even if no one else did. As she walked with her friends to their next class, a few supportive teachers offered quiet words of acknowledgement. Mrs. Reynolds, who had earlier been constrained by policy, caught Aaliyah's eye and smiled warmly. "You handled that beautifully," she said, voice low but sincere. "I hope you know how impressive your composure and intelligence were today." The praise, coupled with the subtle recognition from her peers, reinforced a deep sense of empowerment. Aaliyah realized that her journey had not only been about addressing Maya's bullying but also about discovering and embracing her own strength. In a moment of quiet reflection, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the support of those who believed in her, for the lessons learned through challenges, and for the inner strength that allowed her to face adversity without compromising her values. The public humiliation of her bully had been satisfying, but it was the affirmation of her resilience and the acknowledgement of her intelligence that truly marked the turning point. As Aaliyah walked through the bustling hallways, she lifted her chin slightly, feeling an unshakable sense of empowerment. She had faced fear, adversity, and intimidation, and emerged not only unscathed but stronger, wiser, and more confident. The experience had transformed her, instilling a lasting belief in her own capabilities. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel truly unstoppable, ready to face any challenge with the courage, intellect, and dignity that defined her. In the days following the assembly, Crestwood High gradually settled into a new rhythm. The ripple effects of Aaliyah's strategic exposure of Maya's bullying were felt across classrooms, hallways, and social media feeds. Maya, once untouchable, now faced a reckoning. Administrators, who had previously been slow to act, were compelled to address her behavior decisively. Detentions were assigned, apologies were required, and her social credibility suffered significant damage among peers who had once feared her. The tables had turned, and the consequences were both public and undeniable. Maya's social standing faltered as students who had silently observed her cruelty now recognized the courage and intelligence behind Aaliyah's calm composure. Whispered conversations praised Aaliyah's maturity, strategic thinking, and ability to handle a difficult situation without stooping to vengeance. The school environment, once tense and uncomfortable for her, began to improve. Students treated her with a newfound respect, while teachers, having witnessed the effectiveness of her calm yet decisive response, subtly adjusted their perceptions and interactions. Despite the change in dynamics, Aaliyah maintained her grounded nature. She did not flaunt her triumph, nor did she let the incident define her relationships. Instead, she used her influence to foster a more positive and respectful atmosphere. Students who had been intimidated by Maya now felt empowered to act with integrity, inspired by Aaliyah's example. The subtle shifts in peer culture reflected her quiet, lasting impact, demonstrating that true leadership was not about dominance, but intelligence, composure, and ethical action. Vin Diesel, observing the developments from a distance, expressed quiet pride in his daughter. During a private conversation, he reaffirmed his unwavering support while emphasizing her autonomy. "You handled this in a way that was entirely yours," he said, his tone warm but firm. "I'm proud of how smart, composed, and resilient you were. You didn't need me to intervene publicly, and that shows how capable you truly are." Aaliyah felt a deep sense of validation, knowing that while her father's presence was a protective shadow, the decisions and actions had been entirely her own. The resolution extended beyond administrative action and social dynamics. It solidified Aaliyah's sense of self, reinforcing that strength, intelligence, and strategic thinking could navigate even the most challenging environments. Maya's arrogance had been dismantled, but the victory was more than personal. It was a demonstration of the power of thoughtful action, patience, and resilience. By the end of the week, the hallways of Crestwood High reflected the new order. Aaliyah's presence commanded respect, but it was a quiet, dignified respect, born from admiration rather than fear. Students and teachers alike recognized that she was not only intelligent and capable but also someone whose ethical compass guided her every decision. Maya, now humbled, had become a cautionary example of how arrogance and cruelty could be dismantled without resorting to malice. In this restored balance, Aaliyah found a sense of peace. The school was no longer a battleground but a place where her influence, courage, and intelligence could flourish. With her father's support subtly reinforcing her confidence, yet allowing her autonomy to shine, Aaliyah's world had transformed. Order, respect, and empowerment had been restored, not through intimidation, but through the undeniable strength of character and calculated action. The sun streamed through the tall windows of Crestwood High, casting a warm glow on the bustling hallways. Students moved between classes, some chatting in small groups, others absorbed in their own thoughts. In the midst of it all, Aaliyah walked with a serene confidence, her steps measured, her posture upright, and a quiet smile playing at the corners of her lips. She had earned this moment, not through dominance or intimidation, but through intelligence, patience, and an unwavering sense of self. Her peers greeted her with nods of respect and whispers of admiration, subtle yet sincere acknowledgments of the transformation she had brought to the school's social landscape. Teachers offered approving glances, and friends fell naturally into step beside her, reinforcing the atmosphere of support she had quietly cultivated. Even in the face of prior adversity, she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable than ever. Every challenge she had faced, the bullying, the whispers, the ignored warnings, had become a stepping stone toward a lasting sense of empowerment. Aaliyah paused briefly near the library, watching a group of younger students practice for a presentation. A fleeting thought crossed her mind: the challenges were not over. Life beyond school, the unpredictable nature of human behavior, and the subtle complexities of adolescence would continue to test her resilience. Yet, unlike before, she was ready. She had learned that confidence was not a shield against obstacles, but the power to navigate them with intelligence, poise, and courage. As she continued her walk, a soft notification on her phone reminded her of a video call scheduled with her father. Vin Diesel's voice, calm and reassuring, would soon fill her ears, a reminder that she was supported yet empowered to act independently. That balance, the blend of guidance and autonomy, was one of the greatest gifts she carried, and it was now deeply ingrained in her approach to life. With a final glance around the school that had once felt like a battlefield, Aaliyah's smile widened. She knew that the story of her triumph would linger in the minds of peers and teachers alike, a testament to resilience, intelligence, and strategic thinking. And as she stepped forward into the world beyond those familiar hallways, one thought resonated clearly, strengthening her spirit. They tried to break me, but I was born to rise. No one could underestimate me ever again.